The lights of Nexus Prime sparkled like stars against the dark void of space. The massive station hung between three solar systems, neutral ground where the galaxy's most important decisions were made. Today, representatives from dozens of worlds had gathered for the annual Peace Summit. Ambassador Kyung-Ho Park adjusted his simple gray suit and smiled at his reflection in the transport shuttle window. At 42, he looked younger than most alien diplomats, with kind eyes and gentle hands that had never held a weapon. The other species often commented on how peaceful humans appeared compared to their own kind. Ready for another day of making friends? Asked Dr. Haewon Kim from the seat beside him. She was reviewing her notes on alien customs, her voice soft and warm. As the delegation's xenobiologist, she spent her time studying other species to help humans understand them better. Always, Kyung-Ho replied, his smile never wavering. Though I suspect today might be more interesting than usual. Jin-Woo Lee sat quietly in the back of the shuttle, watching everything with calm, dark eyes. As head of security for the human delegation, he rarely spoke during these diplomatic trips. Most aliens forgot he was even there, which was exactly how he preferred it. The shuttle docked with Nexus Prime, and the human delegation walked through the gleaming corridors toward the main conference hall. Other species moved around them, the tall, insect-like Veltar with their clicking mandibles, the crystal-bodied Mordan that sang instead of spoke, and the floating energy forms of the Ethrin that pulsed with different colors to show their emotions. The humans arrive, buzzed Ambassador Zithkar of the Veltar, his compound eyes focusing on Kyung-Ho. Always on time, always smiling. How do your kind stay so calm? Kyung-Ho's smile grew wider. We just try to see the best in every situation. Conflict usually comes from misunderstanding, don't you think? The Veltar's antennae twitched in what humans had learned was their version of agreement. Over the past 50 years, humans had become the galaxy's favorite mediators. They seemed to understand everyone's problems and always found ways to make peace. The conference hall was enormous, with delegates sitting in sections designed for their specific needs. The Mordan had crystal platforms that amplified their harmonic speech. The Veltar had elevated perches that satisfied their need to look down on their surroundings. The Ethrin floated in energy containment fields that let them maintain their preferred form. The humans sat in simple chairs at a basic table, looking almost primitive compared to the advanced setups around them. This had always worked in their favor. Other species saw them as humble and non-threatening. "Welcome, friends," Kyung-Ho said, as he stood to address the assembly. His voice carried clearly through the hall's translation systems. Another year has passed, and once again we gather to strengthen the bonds between our worlds. As he spoke about trade agreements and cultural exchanges, Haewon observed the other delegates carefully. She noted how the Veltar's eyes tracked movement, how the Mordan's crystal bodies grew brighter when they were excited, how the Etherin's energy patterns shifted with their moods. To the other species, she appeared to be taking notes on cultural behaviors. They had no idea she was cataloging much more detailed information. Jin-Woo's eyes never stopped moving. He counted exits, noted which delegates wore concealed communication devices, and tracked the movement of station security. To anyone watching, he looked like a bored bodyguard. None of them realized he was mapping the entire station's defensive capabilities out of pure habit. The humans propose expanding the student exchange program, Kyung-Ho continued, his hands gesturing gently as he spoke. Young minds learning from each other can only bring our species closer together. The Morden delegate, a tall crystal being named Harmony of Distant Bells, chimed a pleased melody. The humans always think of the future generations. Your species has such wisdom for one so young in galactic terms. We learn from our elders, Kyung-ho replied with a modest bow. Every species here has gifts to share. What the aliens didn't know was that human students in these exchange programs were carefully selected for their ability to observe and adapt. They returned to Earth with detailed knowledge of alien technology, social structures, and weaknesses. The humans called it cultural learning. Their military called it intelligence gathering. During the lunch break, delegates mingled in smaller groups. Hay-One found herself in conversation with a young Veltar scientist named Click-Strike Echo. "Your species fascinates me." Click-Strike Echo buzzed, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Humans are the only species that evolved from what you call persistence hunting, yes? You would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion?" Hay-One nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Our ancestors were very determined. When they wanted something, they didn't give up easily. But you've moved so far beyond such primitive behaviors," the Veltar continued. "Now you use that same determination for peace and diplomacy." "Determination is determination," Hay-One said quietly. "The methods change, but the core remains the same." Click-Strike Echo didn't understand the chill that should have run down his spine at those words. Across the room, Jinwoo noticed something that made his muscles tense slightly. 3 Corvash delegates were positioned at strategic points around. The hall and their body language was wrong. The Corvash were a warrior species, proud and aggressive, but these 3 were trying too hard to appear relaxed. Their eyes moved in patterns that suggested they were checking positions and timing. Jinwoo touched his communication device once, a signal that meant possible threat to any human who saw it. Kyung-ho glanced his way and received the message, with the barest nod of his head. "Is something wrong?" asked the Etherin delegate, a being of pure energy called Bright Wind Dancing. Its form shifted to a concerned blue color. "Not at all," Kyung-ho replied smoothly. "I was just thinking how wonderful it is to see so many different species working together in harmony." But his mind was already shifting into a different mode. The diplomatic mask was still in place, but underneath it, older instincts were awakening. His ancestors had survived by reading danger in the smallest signs: a broken twig, the wrong scent on the wind, the way prey animals went silent when predators were near. The afternoon sessions continued with discussions about mining rights and shipping routes. The humans presented their proposals with the same gentle persistence they always showed. They asked probing questions that seemed innocent but gathered valuable intelligence. They offered help that would make other species dependent on human expertise. "The human proposals are always so reasonable," commented the Mordan delegate. "You never ask for anything that seems unfair." "We believe in long-term thinking," Kyung-ho replied. "What's good for everyone is good for humans, too." This was true, but not in the way the aliens understood it. Humans did think long-term, but their planning horizon was measured in generations, not years. Every treaty they signed, every trade deal they negotiated, every cultural exchange they proposed was part of a larger pattern that the other species couldn't see. As the day's sessions ended, delegates began returning to their quarters. Jinwoo's unease had grown stronger throughout the afternoon. The Corvash delegates had been too quiet, too careful in their movements. Something was building toward a crisis. "Sleep well, everyone," Kyung-ho told the departing delegates, his diplomatic smile as warm and genuine as ever. "Tomorrow we'll continue building bridges between our worlds." None of the aliens noticed how his eyes had grown slightly colder, or how his hands had unconsciously positioned themselves for quick movement. The mask was still perfectly in place, but underneath it, something very old and very dangerous was beginning to wake up. The galaxy's most successful diplomats were getting ready for bed, but the hunters that lived beneath their civilized surface were starting to pay attention. Dr. So-Young Choi sat in her small office aboard the human research vessel Endurance, orbiting Nexus Prime. The ship looked like a simple science vessel from the outside, but its true purpose was far more complex. So-Young was an anthropologist, but she studied her own species rather than aliens. Her research files contained secrets that would terrify the galaxy. She opened a secure datapad and began recording her daily notes. Her voice was calm and professional, like any scientist documenting their findings. Research log, day 847. Subject: Human behavioral evolution and its application to galactic diplomacy. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Today's observations continue to confirm our species' unique position among galactic civilizations. So-Young touched a control, and her screen filled with images of Earth's ancient past. Cave paintings showed humans with spears, tracking massive animals across endless plains. The paintings looked primitive, but they told a story that no other species in the galaxy could claim. Humans are the only known sapient species that evolved from persistence hunters, she continued. While other intelligent races developed from prey animals, herd creatures, or scavengers, we come from predators. But not just any predators, we were endurance hunters. She pulled up a recording from earlier that day showing Kyung-ho Park in the conference hall. To most observers, he looked like the perfect diplomat, patient, understanding, always listening. But So-Young saw something different. "Watch his eyes," she narrated. "Notice how they track every delegate's movements. He's not just being polite. He's cataloging behavioral patterns." When the Veltar delegate spoke about trade routes, Kyung-ho tilted his head slightly. "That's not interest. That's the same head tilt our ancestors used when listening for wounded prey." The recording continued, showing Kyung-ho asking questions about shipping schedules and cargo manifests. His tone was friendly and curious, but So-Young knew what she was really watching. Persistence hunting required our ancestors to learn everything about their prey. Migration patterns, feeding habits, weaknesses, escape routes. They would study an animal for days before beginning the hunt. Notice how Ambassador Park asks about alien psychology, social structures, defense capabilities. He calls it cultural exchange, but the pattern is identical. So-Young switched to another file, this one showing Min-ho Yoon in a different meeting from the previous month. He was labeled as a trade negotiator, but So-Young saw something else entirely. Subject Min-ho demonstrates classic pack hunting coordination, she observed. Watch how he positions himself during negotiations. Never directly confrontational, but always cutting off retreat options. He guides conversations like our ancestors guided prey, creating the illusion of choice while actually controlling every possible outcome. The file showed Min-ho working with other human negotiators. To alien observers, they seemed to disagree with each other, offering different proposals and sometimes arguing. But So-Young could see the hidden coordination. Pack hunting required precise teamwork. Different hunters had different roles: the tracker, the herder, the blocker, the closer. Modern human diplomacy uses the same structure. Minho plays the reasonable moderate while his colleagues take harder positions. The aliens think they're negotiating with the reasonable one, not realizing they're being herded toward predetermined conclusions. She opened another file. This one focused on Dr. Hae-won Kim. The footage showed Hae-won at various cultural events, always smiling and asking innocent questions about alien biology and behavior. Dr. Kim's role appears to be scientific research, but her true function is threat assessment, So Young continued. She studies alien physiology not for academic purposes, but to identify pressure points and vulnerabilities. Her questions about alien reproduction, social hierarchies, and fear responses are the same questions a predator asks about prey. The recording showed Hae-won examining a Morden crystal formation, asking detailed questions about how the crystals grew and what could damage them. To the Morden, she seemed fascinated by their beautiful biological structure. So Young saw something much darker. Our ancestors needed to understand anatomy to kill efficiently. They studied bone structure, muscle attachment points, circulation, patterns. Dr. Kim's research follows identical patterns. She maps alien biology the way a hunter maps prey. So Young pulled up historical records from Earth's past. Images of human settlements spread across the planet, showing how the species had expanded from Africa to every continent. Humans are the only species that successfully colonized their entire planet, she noted. We adapted to every environment: Arctic, desert, jungle, mountain, island. Other intelligent species stayed in their preferred habitats. We went everywhere. She compared this to current human expansion into the galaxy. Human colonies existed in dozens of star systems, often in environments that other species found uncomfortable or impossible. The same adaptability that led us. Hunt in any environment now lets us establish ourselves in any galactic community. We don't try to change the environment to suit us. We change ourselves to fit in. It's the perfect camouflage. The next file showed Jin-Woo Lee during a routine security briefing. He appeared calm and professional, but So Young's analysis revealed layers of predatory awareness. Security Chief Lee demonstrates constant threat assessment behavior. His eyes never stop moving. He automatically identifies weapons, escape routes, and tactical positions in every environment. This isn't training, it's instinct. Our ancestors, who couldn't assess threats quickly, became prey themselves. She zoomed in on Jin-Woo's hands during the briefing. They looked relaxed, but So Young pointed out subtle details. Notice the finger positioning. He's unconsciously prepared to grab and strike at any moment. Watch his feet, balanced and ready to move in any direction. His breathing is controlled for maximum oxygen intake. These are behaviors of an apex, predator maintaining readiness. So Young switched to recordings of human children playing in the embassy's family quarters. Even their games revealed the truth about human nature. Human children play hunting games instinctively, she observed. Tag, hide and seek, capture the flag, all variations of predator-prey dynamics. They form teams naturally, develop strategies, and compete intensely. Other species' children play cooperation games or individual skill challenges. Only human children naturally play hunting games. She showed footage of alien children playing alongside human children. The alien young were confused by human games, not understanding the point of catching someone or hiding from others. The other species find human children's games strange and slightly disturbing, but they can't articulate why. They sense something predatory in the play, but they dismiss it as harmless fun. They don't realize they're watching apex predators learning to hunt. So Young's expression grew more serious as she accessed classified files about human colonial expansion. Analysis of human settlement patterns reveals systematic territorial acquisition, she continued. We don't conquer worlds directly. We make ourselves indispensable. We offer aid, technology, and protection. Within a generation, the target species becomes dependent on human presence. It's domestication disguised as friendship. The files showed dozens of alien species that now relied on human assistance for everything from food production to defense systems. What looked like generous aid programs were actually careful dependency creation. Our ancestors domesticated animals by controlling their food supply and protection needs. We've applied the same strategy to entire civilizations. The aliens think we're helping them, but we're actually managing them. She opened her final file, the most classified of all. It contained psychological profiles of every major alien species, detailing their fears, desires, social weaknesses, and potential breaking points. Complete species profiles, she said quietly. Everything needed to control or eliminate every major civilization in the galaxy. We call it cultural research, but it's actually a predator's complete knowledge of available prey. So Young leaned back in her chair, looking tired. The weight of her research was enormous. She was documenting the truth about her own species, that humanity had never stopped being hunters. They had simply learned to hunt on a galactic scale. Conclusion: humans have successfully positioned themselves as the galaxy's apex predators while maintaining a facade of peaceful cooperation. Every diplomatic success, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange serves to strengthen our predatory position. The other species see us as friends and protectors, never realizing they've become our prey. She closed the files and locked them with multiple security protocols. This research could never be released publicly. The galaxy's civilizations were living in a carefully constructed illusion, and So Young was one of the few people who could see the truth. Outside her window, Nexus Prime continued its peaceful rotation, full of delegates who thought they were negotiating with equals. They had no idea they were actually in a cage with the galaxy's most dangerous predators. The morning of the third day started with routine pleasantries and coffee in the diplomatic quarters. Ambassador Kyung-ho Park stood at the observation deck's massive window, watching cargo ships dock with Nexus Prime. His reflection showed the same kind face that had earned him trust across the galaxy. Behind him, delegates from a dozen species prepared for another day of peaceful negotiations. "Beautiful morning," commented Ambassador Zithkar, joining Kyung-ho at the window. "The Veltars." Compound eyes focused on the human's face, searching for something he couldn't quite name. "Every morning is beautiful when you're building bridges between worlds," Kyung-ho replied with his characteristic warmth. But somewhere in the back of his mind, old instincts whispered warnings. Jinwoo's signal from yesterday still bothered him. 3 levels below, Jinwoo Lee moved through the station's security center with practiced ease. His credentials gave him access to most areas, another benefit of humanity's trusted status. The security chief, a 4-armed Mordan named Crystal Song Deep, welcomed him cheerfully. "Anything interesting on the sensors last night?" Jinwoo asked, casually, his eyes scanning the monitor displays. "Nothing unusual," Crystal Song Deep chimed. "Though we did detect some unauthorized movement in the maintenance sectors around 0300 hours. Probably just cleaning crews." Jinwoo nodded, but his trained eye caught details the Mordan had missed. The movement patterns on the security recordings weren't random. They showed coordination, timing, and purpose. Someone had been positioning equipment during the night shift. "Mind if I take a look at the cargo manifests?" he asked. "Just routine, security review." As he scrolled through the data, Jinwoo's blood grew cold. 3 Corvash freight containers had arrived yesterday, listed as carrying cultural artifacts for the summit. But the weight distribution was wrong. The containers were too heavy for art objects and too light for the weapons they were probably hiding. "I need to make a quick call," Jinwoo said, his voice still calm and professional. He stepped into a private communication booth and activated a secure channel. "Package has multiple components," he said simply. "Decorations in place. Party starts soon." Across the station, Kyung-ho's communication device buzzed once. The code was clear. Armed assault incoming, weapons pre-positioned, attack imminent. His diplomatic smile never faltered as he processed the information. "Excuse me for just a moment," he told Zithkar. "I need to check on some scheduling details." Kyung-ho walked calmly to the nearest human team member, Dr. Haewon Kim, who was discussing alien physiology with a group of Etheran scientists. His approach looked casual, but she recognized the subtle signals immediately. "Dr. Kim, could you help me with something?" he asked politely. "I'm having trouble understanding some cultural references. The code phrase activated emergency protocols." Haewon's expression remained interested and helpful, but her mind shifted into combat assessment mode. "Of course, Ambassador. What specifically are you confused about?" "Some details about pressure points in cross-cultural communication," he said. Haewon understood. He was asking for tactical intelligence on alien vulnerabilities. She began moving through the crowd, casually engaging different species in conversation while mentally cataloging their physical weaknesses and psychological pressure points. Meanwhile, Jae-sung Kim was in the agricultural wing, supposedly reviewing crop rotation data with alien farmers. When his communication device signaled, he smoothly transitioned from discussing soil composition to identifying potential weapons and defensive positions throughout the station. "Fascinating how you manage resource distribution," he told a Veltar agricultural coordinator. "What happens when your supply lines get cut?" The question seemed innocent, but Jae-sung was mapping the station's critical infrastructure and supply vulnerabilities. Yoon Ji-han was still in the cultural center, chatting with young alien delegates about art and music. Her friendly demeanor masked the fact that she was assessing their psychological profiles and group dynamics, identifying who would panic first in a crisis and how chaos would spread through different species. The Corvash made their move during the afternoon plenary session. Ambassador Kyung-ho was addressing the assembly about humanitarian aid distribution when the lights suddenly cut out. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the conference hall as sealed blast doors slammed shut, trapping everyone inside. "Nobody move," growled a Corvash voice through the darkness. "This station is now under our control." The Corvash were reptilian humanoids, built for war. They stood 8 feet tall with scales that could deflect most energy weapons. Their species had been demanding territorial concessions for months, growing increasingly frustrated with the slow pace of diplomatic negotiations. As the aliens panicked in the darkness, something remarkable happened to the humans. The change was subtle, but unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. Their posture shifted, their breathing patterns altered, and their eyes began tracking movement with predatory precision. Ambassador Kyung-ho's diplomatic mask didn't disappear entirely, but it became transparent. The kindness in his eyes was replaced by cold calculation as he counted the number of attackers, assessed their weapons, and began planning their elimination. "Please remain calm, everyone," he said, his voice carrying across the panicked crowd. But the tone was different now, commanding instead of reassuring, with an authority that made even the Korvash hesitate momentarily. Jin Woo moved through the darkness like it was his natural environment. Years of diplomatic training had taught him the layout of every major station and facility in the galaxy. He knew exactly where the Korvash would position their forces and exactly how to reach them. The first Korvash sentry never saw him coming. The aliens' superior strength and armor meant nothing when Jin Woo struck at precisely the right nerve cluster, using knowledge that Dr. Hae-Won had provided during their cultural exchanges with the Korvash delegation months earlier. Dr. Hae-Won herself was putting that knowledge to more direct use. She approached a group of confused alien delegates in the darkness, her voice gentle and reassuring. "Don't worry, I know where the emergency exits are," she whispered to a frightened Veltar. "But first, can you tell me, when your species feels threatened, do you freeze or run?" The questions seemed like concerned inquiry, but she was actually conducting rapid psychological profiling to predict how different groups would behave during the crisis. Every species had different panic responses, and she needed to know which delegates would be helpful, which would be obstacles, and which could be used as living shields if necessary. Jae-sung had disappeared entirely from the agricultural wing, but his absence went unnoticed in the chaos. He was moving through the station's maintenance tunnels, using his detailed knowledge of the infrastructure to reach critical systems. His farming expertise had given him perfect cover to map every power junction, life support node, and communication relay on the station. Yoonji found herself trapped with a group of young alien delegates in the cultural center. Instead of panicking like the others, she began speaking in a calm, steady voice. "Listen to me carefully," she told them. "I'm going to tell you a story about how to survive when monsters come hunting." Her voice carried the same gentle tone she had used for bedtime stories, but now the aliens understood that those tales hadn't been entertainment. They had been training manuals. As she guided the group through the darkness, using techniques from every children's story she had ever told, the young aliens realized they were being rescued by someone who had learned to hunt monsters as a child. Back in the main hall, the Korvash leader was growing frustrated. His carefully planned assault was falling apart. His perimeter guards weren't responding to radio calls. The station's security system seemed to be turning against him, and the human ambassador was staring at him with eyes that looked nothing like those of a peaceful diplomat. "You will release the emergency locks and allow us safe passage," the Korvash commander demanded, his weapon trained on Ambassador Kyung-ho. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Kyung-ho replied calmly. His diplomatic smile was gone entirely now, replaced by something that made the hardened Korvash warrior take an involuntary step backward. For the first time, the galaxy's most trusted peacemakers had dropped their masks completely. The aliens, in the conference hall, found themselves face to face with apex predators who had been pretending to be diplomats. And the hunt was about to begin. The emergency lighting cast long shadows across the conference hall as the Korvash commander realized his situation was deteriorating rapidly. He had expected panic, confusion, and easy control over the trapped delegates. Instead, he faced something that made his warrior instincts scream warnings he didn't understand. Ambassador Kyung-ho Park stood perfectly still in the center of the hall, but his stillness was that of a predator choosing the perfect moment to strike. Around him, other alien delegates cowered behind overturned tables and chairs. The humans, however, had spread out in a pattern that looked random, but wasn't. "Your perimeter teams aren't responding because they're no longer functional," Kyung-ho said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "My security chief has been hunting your people through the station for the past 20 minutes. The Korvash commander's scaled hide prickled with unease. "Impossible. We disabled your communications. Your people don't even carry weapons." "Weapons?" Kyung-ho's smile was nothing like his diplomatic expression. "We are weapons." In the maintenance tunnels beneath the station, Jinwoo Lee moved through the darkness with deadly precision. The Korvash had expected to face security forces armed with energy weapons and body armor. They hadn't prepared for a single human who moved like smoke and struck like lightning. The second sentry never saw the blow that collapsed his windpipe. The third managed to raise his weapon before Jinwoo's fingers found the nerve cluster that Dr. Haiwan had mapped during their cultural exchange dinner 3 months ago. The Korvash's own superior strength worked against him as his muscles locked into paralysis. Jinwoo spoke into his communicator, his voice barely above a whisper. "Third floor cleared. Moving to communications hub." Throughout the station, the other humans received the message through communication methods the Korvash hadn't even known existed. Humans had learned long ago that successful pack hunting required silent coordination. Dr. Hye-won Kim was putting her extensive research to practical use. She found the Korvash weapons cache exactly where tactical doctrine suggested it would be, near the power distribution center. The two guards never understood how a small woman in a lab coat had gotten behind them. Her knowledge of Korvash anatomy was comprehensive. She knew that their scales were weakest at the joints, that their enhanced strength came from a specific muscle group that could be disabled with precise pressure, and that their aggressive nature made them predictable in close combat. The guards dropped silently, their nervous systems shut down by someone who had spent years studying them under the pretense of scientific collaboration. "Arsenal secured," she reported calmly. "Redistributing equipment to our assets." In the cultural wing, Yoonji Han led a group of young alien delegates through corridors that should have been controlled by Korvash forces. Somehow, the enemies they encountered were already unconscious, or worse. The young aliens didn't understand how their gentle guide seemed to know exactly where danger waited and how to avoid it. "Stay close and stay quiet," she whispered, her voice carrying the same tone she had used for storytelling. "Remember the tale of the 7 ravens? Sometimes you have to be very patient and very clever to save your family." What the young aliens didn't realize was that Yoonji was putting every childhood story into practice. She moved like the clever princess who outwitted the dragon, guided them like the breadcrumbs in the forest, and struck at enemies like the woodsman with his axe. Her cultural performances had been detailed psychological warfare studies. She knew exactly how to demoralize an enemy, how to create confusion and fear, and how to turn their own strength against them. Every bedtime story had been a lesson in asymmetric warfare. Meanwhile, Jae-sung Kim had reached the station's life support center. His years of agricultural consultation had given him intimate knowledge of every major facility's infrastructure. He understood better than the station's own engineers how to turn the environmental systems into weapons. The Korvash had secured the obvious control points: communications, security, and weapons. They hadn't thought to guard the air filtration systems, water recycling, or power distribution networks. Jae-sung smiled grimly as he began making adjustments that would create a very different kind of harvest. Atmospheric pressure shifting. In target areas, he reported, oxygen content reducing to optimal levels, preparing for dispersal phase. Back in the main conference hall, the alien delegates watched in growing horror as they realized what was happening. The humans weren't panicking or cowering. They were hunting. Dr. So-Young Choi emerged from the research section with several other human civilians, teachers, artists, engineers, and maintenance workers, all moving with the same predatory coordination that should have been impossible for non-military personnel. You see, Kyung-ho explained to the increasingly nervous Korvash commander, your mistake was thinking that we have soldiers and civilians. We don't. We just have hunters who specialize in different types of prey. The Korvash commander raised his weapon, but Ambassador Zithkar made a small sound of alarm. The Veltar delegate had finally understood what his compound eyes were showing. Him. The movement patterns, he whispered. They're pack-hunting patterns. Every human in the hall was positioned to cover escape routes, create crossfire opportunities, and support coordinated attacks. They hadn't scattered randomly when the crisis began. They had automatically formed a hunting formation that their species had used for millions of years. Impossible, the Korvash commander snarled. You're diplomats, scientists, cultural specialists. We're persistence hunters, Kyung-ho corrected gently. We don't give up, we don't back down, and we learn everything about our prey before we begin the hunt. The light suddenly came back on, revealing the true situation. Korvash attackers throughout the hall were unconscious, disarmed, or worse. Human civilians stood over them with improvised weapons and captured equipment. But more disturbing than the violence was the complete lack of panic among the humans. Children in the family section had automatically moved to defensive positions. Elderly academics were calmly administering first aid while keeping weapons within reach. Even the youngest humans showed the same predatory awareness as their adult counterparts. We've been studying your species for 3 years, Dr. Hae-won reported as she entered the hall with an armload of Korvash weapons. Psychological profiles, physical capabilities, tactical doctrines, and social structures. We know your weaknesses better than you do. The Korvash commander's weapon trembled in his grasp as he looked around at faces that no longer bore any resemblance to the peaceful diplomats he had expected to terrorize. Your mistake, said Min Ho-yoon as he appeared with the rest of the human delegation, was thinking that diplomacy and warfare are different skills. For us, they're the same thing. We've been studying you, learning your patterns, mapping your responses. Every cultural exchange, every trade negotiation, every friendly conversation has been gathering intelligence for this moment. The alien delegates finally understood what they had been witnessing for years. Human curiosity about alien biology had been threat assessment. Cultural exchanges had been intelligence operations. Diplomatic patience had been the persistence. Hunting strategy applied to politics. We offered you honorable terms, Kyung-ho said, his voice carrying the authority of something much older and more dangerous than any politician. We gave you opportunities to resolve this peacefully. But you chose to threaten our pack. The word pack sent chills through every alien in the hall. For the first time, they understood that they weren't dealing with individual humans acting independently. They were facing a coordinated hunting group that had been pretending to be civilized diplomats. Surrender now, Kyung-ho continued, and you'll be treated according to galactic law. Continue this aggression, and you'll learn why humans are the only species that successfully hunted everything else on their home planet. The Korvash commander looked around the hall at the faces watching him. Every human face showed the same, patient, predatory focus. They weren't angry or frightened. They were simply waiting for him to make his choice, surrender to the hunters, or become their prey. For the first time in Korvash history, a warrior chose surrender over battle. The Kai alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. The conference hall fell silent as the Korvash commander slowly lowered his weapon. Around him, his remaining warriors looked to their leader with confusion and growing fear. They had never seen their commander surrender, but they had also never faced anything like the coordinated response they were witnessing. A wise choice, Ambassador Kyung-ho said, but his tone carried no warmth. The diplomatic mask was completely gone now, replaced by something that made even the most hardened Korvash warrior nervous. Dr. Hae-won moved through the disabled attackers with clinical efficiency, checking their status and securing their weapons. Her gentle bedside manner had vanished, replaced by the methodical approach of someone cataloging hunting trophies. 17 hostiles neutralized, she reported. No serious injuries to our assets or allied personnel. Recommend immediate medical attention for targets 7, 12, and 15. Their nerve clusters may have been overstimulated. The alien delegates watched in stunned silence. Dr. Hae-won spoke about the attackers like they were specimens in a laboratory experiment. Her overstimulated nerve clusters comment revealed that she had been targeting specific anatomical points for precise incapacitation. Jin-Woo Lee emerged from the maintenance access, his clothes slightly rumpled, but otherwise showing no signs of the hunt he had just completed. He carried a collection of Korvash communication devices and what appeared to be their tactical coordination equipment. Perimeter secured, he reported to Kyung-ho. 12 additional hostiles neutralized throughout the station. Their command structure has been completely disrupted, communications intercepted and analyzed. Casualties? Kyung-ho asked. None on our side. Enemy casualties minimal. Mostly unconscious from nerve disruption and pressure point manipulation. They'll recover, though some may have lasting neurological effects. The casual discussion of neurological effects sent chills through the watching delegates. These humans were discussing permanent damage to their attackers with the same tone they used for planning lunch menus. Yoon Ji-han appeared with her group of rescued alien delegates. The young beings looked traumatized, but not from their encounter. With the Korvash, they were staring at their rescuer with wide, frightened eyes. The children are safe, she reported cheerfully. Her storytelling voice returned. Though I think some of them finally understand what our fairy tales really mean. One of the young Veltar delegates, Click Strike Echo, approached Ambassador Zithkar with trembling antennae. Elder, he whispered. The human female. She moved through the corridors like she could see in complete darkness. She knew exactly where the enemies were waiting, and when they tried to stop us... What happened? Zithkar asked quietly. She told them a story about a hunter and a wolf. While she was talking, she did things to them. They just fell down and stopped moving, but she kept smiling and speaking in that gentle voice. Across the hall, Jae-sung Kim was coordinating with station engineering to restore normal operations. But his agricultural expertise was revealing itself to be something much more comprehensive. Life support systems optimized, he reported. Security barriers repositioned for better defensive coverage. Emergency protocols updated to human tactical standards. The station is now operating at enhanced efficiency. The Morden chief engineer, Crystal Song Deep, looked confused. Enhanced efficiency? But the systems were already at optimal performance. Optimal for peacetime, Jae-sung corrected. I've adjusted them for combat readiness. Your species designed this station for comfort and cooperation. We've improved it for survival and warfare. The implications were staggering. In the space of a few hours, the humans had not only defeated the Korvash assault, but had taken control of the station's entire infrastructure and optimized it according to their own strategic preferences. Min-Ho Yoon was speaking with the captured Korvash. "Commander," his voice calm and professional. To outside observers, it looked like a standard interrogation, but the alien delegates were beginning to understand that human negotiations followed patterns they had never recognized before. "Your attack was well planned," Min-Ho acknowledged. 3 months of preparation, detailed intelligence gathering, and coordinated positioning. Your mistake was assuming we weren't doing the same thing. The Korvash commander's scales had shifted to a pale, sickly color. "You knew we were coming?" "We've known for 6 weeks," Min-Ho replied matter-of-factly. "We've been tracking your supply movements, monitoring your communication patterns, and analyzing your psychological profiles. Every meeting, every diplomatic exchange, every casual conversation was gathering intelligence about your species' tactical capabilities. But the trade negotiations, the cultural exchanges, were reconnaissance missions," Min-Ho finished. "Every time we asked about your military traditions, your honor codes, your chain of command structure, we were mapping your weaknesses. When we inquired about your physiology, your social hierarchies, your fear responses, we were identifying pressure points." Dr. So-Young Choi had been moving through the crowd of alien delegates, ostensibly checking on their welfare, but her real purpose was more disturbing. She was conducting real-time psychological assessment of every species' response to the crisis. "Fascinating," she murmured to herself, making notes on a data pad. "The Veltar show classic prey animal responses: heightened alertness, herd clustering, and submission to perceived apex predators. The Mordan demonstrate crystalline matrix stress patterns, indicating fundamental worldview disruption. The Etherin energy fluctuations suggest they're reassessing their entire understanding of human nature." Ambassador Brightwind Dancing, the Etherin delegate, overheard the comments and pulsed with alarmed red patterns. "You're studying us? Right now? During this crisis?" "Research opportunities don't wait for convenient scheduling," So-Young replied with academic detachment. "This is the first time your species has seen humans in a combat situation. Your psychological responses are invaluable data for understanding how to better manage future interactions." The word "manage" hung in the air like a threat. The aliens were beginning to realize that humans didn't see them as equals or allies. They saw them as subjects to be studied, understood, and controlled. Kyung-ho called for attention from the center of the hall. His diplomatic demeanor had returned, but it was clearly a performance now. Everyone could see the predator lurking beneath the pleasant facade. "I want to thank everyone for their cooperation during this unfortunate incident," he said, his voice carrying its familiar warmth. "The crisis has been resolved with minimal casualties and no lasting harm to our diplomatic mission." "No lasting harm?" Ambassador Harmony of Distant Bells chimed with discordant notes. "You've just revealed that everything we thought we knew about your species was a lie." "Not a lie," Kyung-ho corrected gently. "An incomplete picture. We are peaceful beings who prefer diplomacy to violence. But we're also apex predators who have never encountered prey we couldn't eventually hunt down." The casual use of the word prey to describe other sapient species sent shockwaves through the assembly. It was the first time a human had explicitly, stated what was becoming terrifyingly obvious. The question now, Kyung-ho continued, is how we move forward. Today's events have revealed certain truths about human nature that perhaps should have remained implicit, but circumstances forced our hand. Dr. Hae-won approached with a datapad containing her analysis of the situation. Psychological impact assessment complete, she reported. Recommend immediate implementation of enhanced cooperation protocols to prevent panic-driven responses from spreading to other systems. Enhanced cooperation protocols? Asked Ambassador Zithkar nervously. Essentially, Kyung-ho explained with his diplomat's smile, we're going to have to manage the galaxy's reaction to today's revelations very carefully. The truth about human nature could cause widespread panic and destabilize the peace we've all worked so hard to build. The alien delegates finally understood the full scope of their situation. The humans weren't just revealing their true nature. They were preparing to manage the consequences of that revelation. The galaxy's apex predators were about to take direct control of their prey. The conference hall fell silent as the Korvash commander slowly lowered his weapon. Around him, his remaining warriors looked to their leader with confusion and growing fear. They had never seen their commander surrender, but they had also never faced anything like the coordinated response they were witnessing. A wise choice, Ambassador Kyung-ho said, but his tone carried no warmth. The diplomatic mask was completely gone now, replaced by something that made even the most hardened Korvash warrior nervous. Dr. Hae-won moved through the disabled attackers with clinical efficiency, checking their status and securing their weapons. Her gentle bedside manner had vanished, replaced by the methodical approach of someone cataloging hunting trophies. 17 hostiles neutralized, she reported. No serious injuries to our assets or allied personnel. Recommend immediate medical attention for targets 7, 12, and 15. Their nerve clusters may have been overstimulated. The alien delegates watched in stunned silence. Dr. Hae-won spoke about the attackers like they were specimens in a laboratory experiment. Her overstimulated nerve clusters comment revealed that she had been targeting specific anatomical points for precise incapacitation. Jin-Woo Lee emerged from the maintenance access, his clothes slightly rumpled but otherwise showing no signs of the hunt he had just completed. He carried a collection of Korvash communication devices and what appeared to be their tactical coordination equipment. Perimeter secured, he reported to Kyung-ho. 12 additional hostiles neutralized throughout the station. Their command structure has been completely disrupted, communications intercepted and analyzed. Casualties? Kyung-ho asked. None on our side. Enemy casualties minimal, mostly unconscious from nerve disruption and pressure point manipulation. They'll recover, though some may have lasting neurological effects. The casual discussion of neurological effects sent chills through the watching delegates. These humans were discussing permanent damage to their attackers with the same tone they used for planning lunch menus. Yoon Han appeared with her group of rescued alien delegates. The young beings looked traumatized, but not from their encounter with the Korvash. They were staring at their rescuer with wide, frightened eyes. The children are safe, she reported cheerfully. Her storytelling voice returned. Though I think some of them finally understand what our fairy tales really mean. One of the young Veltar delegates, Click Strike Echo, approached Ambassador Zithkar with trembling antennae. Elder, he whispered, the human female. She moved through the corridors like she could see in complete darkness. She knew exactly where the enemies were waiting. And when they tried to stop us... What happened? Zithkar asked quietly. She told them a story about a hunter and a wolf. While she was talking, she did things to them. They just fell down and stopped moving, but she kept smiling and speaking in that gentle voice. Across the hall, Jae-Sung Kim was coordinating with station engineering to restore normal operations. But his agricultural expertise was revealing itself to be something much more comprehensive. Life support systems optimized, he reported. Security barriers repositioned for better defensive coverage. Emergency protocols updated to human tactical standards. The station is now operating at enhanced efficiency. The Morden chief engineer, Crystal Song Deep, looked confused. Enhanced efficiency? But the systems were already at optimal performance. Optimal for peacetime, Jae-Sung corrected. I've adjusted them for combat readiness. Your species designed this station for comfort and cooperation. We've improved it for survival and warfare. The implications were staggering. In the space of a few hours, the humans had not only defeated the Korvash assault, but had taken control of the station's entire infrastructure and optimized it according to their own strategic preferences. Min-Ho Yoon was speaking with the captured Korvash. Commander, his voice calm and professional. To outside observers, it looked like a standard interrogation. But the alien delegates were beginning to understand that human negotiations followed patterns they had never recognized before. Your attack was well planned, Min-Ho acknowledged. 3 months of preparation, detailed intelligence gathering, and coordinated positioning. Your mistake was assuming we weren't doing the same thing. The Korvash commander's scales had shifted to a pale, sickly color. You knew we were coming? We've known for 6 weeks, Min-Ho replied matter-of-factly. We've been tracking your supply movements, monitoring your communication patterns, and analyzing your psychological profiles. Every meeting, every diplomatic exchange, every casual conversation was gathering intelligence about your species' tactical capabilities. But the trade negotiations, the cultural exchanges, were reconnaissance missions, Min-Ho finished. Every time we asked about your military traditions, your honor codes, your chain of command structure, we were mapping your weaknesses. When we inquired about your physiology, your social hierarchies, your fear responses, we were identifying pressure points. Dr. So-Young Choi had been moving through the crowd of alien delegates, ostensibly checking on their welfare. But her real purpose was more disturbing. She was conducting real-time psychological assessment of every species' response to the crisis. Fascinating, she murmured to herself, making notes on a data pad. The Veltar show classic prey animal responses. Heightened alertness, herd clustering, and submission to perceived apex predators. The Morden demonstrate crystalline matrix stress patterns indicating fundamental worldview disruption. The Etherin energy fluctuations suggest they're reassessing their entire understanding of human nature. Ambassador Brightwind Dancing, the Etherin delegate, overheard the comments and pulsed with alarmed red patterns. You're studying us? Right now? During this crisis? Research opportunities don't wait for convenient scheduling, So-Young replied with academic detachment. This is the first time your species has seen humans in a combat situation. Your psychological responses are invaluable data for understanding how to better manage future interactions. The word manage hung in the air like a threat. The aliens were beginning to realize that humans didn't see them as equals or allies. They saw them as subjects to be studied, understood, and controlled. Kyung-ho called for attention from the center of the hall. His diplomatic demeanor had returned, but it was clearly a performance now. Everyone could see the predator lurking beneath the pleasant facade. I want to thank everyone for their cooperation during this unfortunate incident, he said, his voice carrying its familiar warmth. The crisis has been resolved with minimal casualties and no lasting harm to our diplomatic mission. No lasting harm? Ambassador Harmony of Distant Bells chimed with discordant notes. You've just revealed that everything we thought we knew about your species was a lie. Not a lie, Kyung-ho corrected gently. An incomplete picture. We are peaceful beings who prefer diplomacy to violence. But we're also apex predators who have never encountered prey we couldn't eventually hunt down. The casual use of the word prey to describe other sapient species sent shockwaves through the assembly. It was the first time a human had explicitly stated what was becoming terrifyingly obvious. The question now, Kyung-ho continued, is how we move forward. Today's events have revealed certain truths about human nature that perhaps should have remained implicit, but circumstances forced our hand. Dr. Hae-won approached with a datapad containing her analysis of the situation. Psychological impact assessment complete, she reported. Recommend immediate implementation of enhanced cooperation protocols to prevent panic-driven responses from spreading to other systems. Enhanced cooperation protocols? Asked Ambassador Zithkar nervously. Essentially, Kyung-ho explained with his diplomat's smile. We're going to have to manage the galaxy's reaction to today's revelations very carefully. The truth about human nature could cause widespread panic and destabilize the peace we've all worked so hard to build. The alien delegates finally understood the full scope of their situation. The humans weren't just revealing their true nature. They were preparing to manage the consequences of that revelation. The galaxy's apex predators were about to take direct control of their prey. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 6 hours after the Corvash assault ended. Representatives from every major species had requested immediate transportation to Nexus Prime. They needed to understand what they had witnessed, and more importantly, what it meant for the future of galactic civilization. Ambassador Kyung-ho Park stood at the center of the Great Assembly Hall, but the atmosphere was completely different from any previous council meeting. Gone was the comfortable familiarity of trusted allies working together. Instead, hundreds of alien eyes watched him with a mixture of fear, suspicion, and dawning comprehension. Fellow delegates, Kyung-ho began, his voice carrying its familiar diplomatic warmth. I understand today's events have raised questions about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Questions? The word came from Elder Vast Mind-Encompassing, the ancient Ethran who rarely spoke at council sessions. His energy form pulsed with deep, purple patterns of profound disturbance. Human ambassadors, we have spent decades believing your species to be peaceful mediators. Now we discover you are apex predators who have been systematically studying us as prey. A ripple of agreement moved through the assembly. Clickstrike Echo, the young Veltar scientist, stood with his entire delegation. The human Dr. Kim asked me detailed questions about Veltar anatomy last month. She wanted to know about our nervous system, our pain responses, our fear reactions. I thought she was interested in xenobiology for peaceful research. She was, Dr. Hae-won Kim replied, calmly from her position with the human delegation. But research has many applications. The admission sent waves of distress through the alien delegates. Dr. Hae-won had just confirmed that her scientific collaboration had actually been intelligence gathering for potential military action. Ambassador Harmony of Distant Bells, her crystalline form ringing with alarm frequencies, addressed the assembly. 3 months ago, the human cultural specialist requested detailed information about Mordan social structures. She wanted to understand our hierarchy patterns, our group decision-making processes, our response to authority figures. Eun-ji Han nodded pleasantly. Cultural understanding is essential for effective communication. You need to know how a species thinks before you can influence their behavior. Influence? The word came from dozens of delegates simultaneously. The humans were no longer hiding their intentions behind diplomatic language. Dr. So-Young Choi stood and activated a large display screen. Perhaps it would be helpful to review the current situation objectively, she said with academic precision. Over the past 50 years, humanity has established itself as the galaxy's primary mediator, arbitrator, and peacekeeping force. The display showed a map of known space with human influence marked in different colors. The pattern was staggering. Humanity had insinuated itself into every major trade route, every strategic alliance, every technological exchange, and every diplomatic relationship in the galaxy. Every species here has become dependent on human mediation for resolving conflicts, So-Young continued. The Veltar rely on human arbitrators for their territorial disputes. The Mordan use human translators for their harmonic communication with other species. The Ethrin depend on human technology for maintaining stable energy forms in different environments. The alien delegates looked around the hall with growing horror as they realized the scope of their dependence. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through military force. They had made themselves indispensable. Your agricultural programs, Ambassador Zithkar said slowly, understanding dawning in his compound eyes. You've been teaching us to depend on human farming techniques, human seed stocks, human soil management. Jae-Sung Kim smiled. Successful domestication requires controlling the food supply. It's been our most effective strategy for managing other species for over 10,000 years. The word domestication fell like a bomb in the assembly hall. Jae-Sung had just explicitly stated that humanity viewed other galactic species as animals, to be managed and controlled. The student exchange programs, whispered a young Mordan delegate. Human children living in our communities, learning our languages, studying our customs. Intelligence operatives in training, confirmed Minho Yoon. Every human child in an alien community returns to Earth with detailed knowledge of that. Species vulnerabilities, social structures, and strategic resources. We call it cultural education. Our military calls it long-term reconnaissance. Elder vast mind encompassing pulsed with increasingly agitated energy patterns. The trade agreements, the technology sharing, the mutual defense pacts, all of it was designed to make us dependent on human systems? Not designed, Kyung-ho corrected. Evolved. Humanity doesn't plan galactic domination. We simply can't help ourselves from optimizing every relationship for our advantage. It's how we survived on a planet where everything else was trying to kill us. Dr. Hae-won activated another display, this one showing biological and psychological profiles of every major species. The detail was staggering, complete anatomical, maps, stress response patterns, social hierarchy analyses, and what were clearly tactical assessment notes. We know exactly how each of your species responds to threat, she explained clinically. We understand your mating behaviors, your territorial instincts, your pack dynamics, and your submission patterns. This information allows us to predict and control your responses to any given situation. You've been treating us like laboratory animals, accused Ambassador Harmony of Distant Bells. "We've been treating you like what you are," replied Dr. So-Young matter-of-factly. "Complex social organisms with predictable behavioral patterns. The same techniques our ancestors used to domesticate wolves, we've applied to entire civilizations." The comparison to domesticated animals hit the assembly like a physical blow. Several delegates made distressed noises in their native languages. Others began clustering together in defensive formations. Jinwoo Lee had been watching these responses with professional interest. "You're demonstrating classic prey animal behaviors right now," he observed. "Herding together, scanning for escape, routes, showing submission postures to perceived predators. It's exactly what our research predicted." "Stop analyzing us," shrieked a Veltar delegate. "We can't," Jinwoo replied honestly. "It's instinctive. When we look at other species, we automatically assess their capabilities, weaknesses, and potential responses. It's how we survived long enough to reach the stars." Kyung-ho raised his hands for attention, and the hall fell silent with frightening speed. The alien delegates had unconsciously begun responding to his authority. Exactly the kind of submission behavior the humans had been cultivating for decades. "The question before us," he said calmly, "is not whether humanity has been managing galactic civilization. We have. The question is whether you prefer our management to chaos." He activated a final display showing conflict statistics over the past 50 years. Before human involvement, this galaxy averaged 47 major wars per decade. Since we became active mediators, that number has dropped to 3. Trade has increased by 340%. Technological advancement has accelerated. Living standards have improved across all measured species at the cost of our freedom, accused Elder Vast Mind Encompassing. "What freedom?" Kyung-ho asked gently. "The freedom to fight endless wars over resources? The freedom to destroy each other through territorial disputes? The freedom to remain isolated and primitive?" Dr. Haewon stepped forward. "You're looking at this from an emotional perspective instead of a practical one. Yes, we've been studying and managing you, but the result has been unprecedented peace and prosperity. You've been domesticated, but you've also been protected, fed, and allowed to flourish." "Like pets," whispered Clickstrike Echo. "Like partners," Kyung-ho corrected. "But partners who need guidance to avoid destroying themselves and others." The alien delegates sat in stunned silence as the full scope of their situation became clear. Humanity had spent 50 years carefully and systematically positioning itself as the galaxy's apex species. Every treaty, every trade deal, every cultural exchange had been designed to create dependency and control. "What happens now?" asked Ambassador Zithkar finally. Kyung-ho's diplomatic smile returned, but now everyone could see the predator behind it. "Now we continue as we have been, but with better understanding on all sides. You know what we are, and we know that you know. The pretense can end." "And if we refuse to accept human dominance?" asked Elder Vast Mind Encompassing. The pause that followed was long and meaningful. Jinwoo Lee's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward his communications device. Dr. Haewon's fingers drummed once against her datapad. Minho Yoon shifted his weight slightly. They were tiny movements, barely noticeable, but every alien in the hall understood they were seeing a pack of predators preparing to respond to a challenge. "That," said Kyung-ho finally, "would be unfortunate for everyone involved." The galaxy's new reality had just been made crystal clear. 3 months after the Nexus Prime incident, the galaxy looked remarkably similar to how it had before. Trade routes operated smoothly, Diplomatic missions continued their work, and the various species maintained their cooperative relationships. To a casual observer, nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Ambassador Kyung-ho Park sat in his office aboard the human diplomatic vessel Harmony, reviewing reports from across known space. The irony of the ship's name wasn't lost on him. Harmony was exactly what humanity had achieved, just not in the way other species had originally understood the term. "Status report," he said to his assembled team. Dr. Hae-won Kim consulted her. Data pad. Psychological adjustment proceeding within expected parameters. The Veltar have increased their cooperation compliance by 23% since the revelation. The Mordan have actually improved their efficiency in resource-sharing agreements. The Ethrin have requested additional human advisors for their energy management systems. Translation? Kyung-ho asked. "They're behaving exactly like domesticated animals adapting to new management." Dr. So Young Choi interjected from her position at the conference table. Initial resistance followed by acceptance, then active cooperation with their new handlers. Jin Woo. Lee nodded grimly. Intelligence reports confirm that several species attempted to form coalition resistance groups immediately after Nexus Prime. All disbanded within 6 weeks. "Why?" asked Min Ho Yoon, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Because they realized they couldn't function without human mediation," Jin Woo replied. "The Veltar tried to negotiate a mining dispute without human arbitrators. It escalated to armed conflict within days. The Mordan attempted to establish direct trade relationships with the Ethrin using their own translation protocols. Complete communication breakdown. The economic disruption cost them millions of credits." Kyung-ho smiled with satisfaction. 50 years of careful dependency creation. They literally cannot maintain galactic civilization without us now. Eun-ji-han entered the briefing room with a group of young human officers, members of the newest generation who had grown up knowing the truth about their species' role in the galaxy. "Cultural integration programs are showing excellent results," she reported. "The storytelling sessions have been rebranded as leadership training workshops. Other species are now voluntarily requesting instruction in human problem-solving methodologies." "They want to learn how to think like predators?" Dr. Hae-won asked with interest. "They want to learn how to be effective like humans," Yoon-ji corrected. "They don't understand that effectiveness and predatory thinking are the same thing. We're teaching them to hunt, and they think we're teaching them to succeed." Jae-sung Kim's voice came through the communication system from the agricultural deck. "Resource management programs have exceeded all projections. We now control or influence 78% of food production in 17 major systems. Any species that considers opposing human authority would face starvation within a standard galactic year." The casual discussion of using food as a weapon didn't disturb anyone in the room. For humans, controlling resources had always been a basic survival strategy. "What about the resistance movements?" Kyung-ho asked. "Monitored and managed," Jin Woo replied. "We've identified 3 major underground networks attempting to coordinate multi-species resistance to human influence. All have been thoroughly infiltrated by our agents. We're allowing them to continue operating because they serve useful purposes, such as they provide early warning of developing problems, they allow us to identify potential troublemakers across multiple species, and they give other aliens the illusion that resistance is possible. False hope prevents despair, which could lead to unpredictable actions." Dr. So Young leaned forward with interest. "The psychological value of controlled opposition is significant. Prey animals remain calmer when they believe escape routes exist, even if those routes are actually traps." A communication alert chimed, and Kyung-ho activated the display screen. Elder Vast Mind Encompassing appeared, his energy form pulsing with resigned blue patterns. Ambassador Park, the ancient Etherin said formally, the Council of Elders has reached a decision regarding humanity's revealed nature. I'm listening, Kyung-ho replied politely. We formally acknowledge human authority in galactic affairs. In exchange, we request assurances that our species will be allowed to maintain our cultural traditions and internal governance structures. Of course, Kyung-ho replied with genuine warmth. We have no interest in micromanaging your daily lives. As long as your decisions don't conflict with galactic stability, you remain free to govern yourselves however you choose. It was a generous offer, and everyone understood the unspoken limitation. Freedom to make any choice that humans approved of wasn't really freedom at all. Thank you, Elder Vast Mind Encompassing said quietly. The Etherin will comply with human guidance. After the communication ended, the room fell silent for a moment. They had just witnessed the formal surrender of one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. Any others? Kyung-ho asked. The Mordan submitted similar requests. Yesterday, Dr. Haewon reported. The Veltar are still debating, but their economic dependence on human trade routes makes resistance impossible. They'll accept the new reality within the month. And the Korvash? Jinwoo's expression grew cold. The survivors have been remarkably cooperative since their assault failed. Apparently, seeing their elite warriors defeated by peaceful diplomats has convinced them that resistance is futile. Minho activated another display showing galactic political maps. Economic integration is proceeding ahead of schedule. Human currency has become the de facto standard for inter-system trade. Human legal frameworks are being adopted for dispute resolution. Human educational programs are expanding to every major world. Within a generation, Dr. So-young observed, their children will think like humans, speak like humans, and solve problems like humans. Complete cultural assimilation disguised as educational opportunity. The final phase of domestication, Kyung-ho agreed. Not just controlling the current generation, but ensuring the next generation can't imagine any other way of thinking. Yun-ji smiled. The best part is they're grateful for it. They think we're helping their children succeed in a competitive galaxy. They don't realize we're teaching their children to compete using human methods, which means they'll never be able to compete against humans. A young human officer raised his hand. Sir, what happens when other species realize the full scope of what we've accomplished? When they understand that we've essentially conquered the galaxy without firing a shot? Kyung-ho's diplomatic smile returned. They already understand, Lieutenant. The question isn't whether they know, it's whether they can do anything about it. He activated a final display showing resource flows, trade dependencies, technological integration, and communication networks across the galaxy. Every line, every connection, every critical system flowed through human-controlled nodes. Look at this web, he said quietly. 50 years of patient work. Every species depends on us for something essential. Food, technology, communication, defense, or economic stability. Remove humanity from the equation and galactic civilization collapses. Within months, we've made ourselves indispensable, Dr. Haewon observed. We've made ourselves inevitable, Kyung-ho corrected. Any species that tries to break free discovers they can't survive without us. Any species that tries to replace us discovers they lack the skills to manage complex interspecies relationships. Any species that tries to resist us discovers they're facing opponents who have been bred for survival in ways they can't even comprehend. The meeting.